Well, I'm Rhonda Powers, and I am an assistant professor of teaching at the University of Memphis, and I've been teaching at the U of M for 12 years. I arrived in 2010 from Auburn University, where I previously taught for 10 years. So I've got about 25 years of teaching experience. And as much as technology changes, students don't really seem to. So I do take attendance every day in class because, as I try to tell my students, participation is how we learn, right? That everything we do in college is practice. But when we set policies, one of the things that we want to remember is, how do the policies advance the student learning, and how do they help us to partner with our students? I think as young instructors, we often get caught up in questions of our own authority. And so we kind of take on adversarial roles. And so I don't try to get too caught up in the minutia of policies. So I take role every day, usually while my students are working. And I don't really make a big deal of it. So if students arrive late, I always just say, happy that you could make it. If they come in over halfway into the class, I might say, it's lovely to see you, but you are not present today in attendance because you weren't here to collaborate with your students and to participate. And most of them understand that without any issues. Students who have to leave early usually let me know before class, and I just ask them to leave quietly. If I know that students are having attendance issues, one of the things that I try to do to encourage more participation is I will send out an email and say, hey, we've been missing you in class. What's going on? Is everything okay? Do you need help? And a lot of times that will prompt them to come back to class. So I try not to let more than 2 or 3 classes go by without sending that email. And of course, I always adhere to, the institutional policies of submitting students who have never attended to the registrar, and of course, early alerts. The early alert system I find really helpful. When it comes to grading, students can't pass a course in the English department without submitting all major grades. So if students have homework missing grades, again, I don't track them down. With major assignments, I have a policy statement that says that students, I will not accept anything that's more than 2 weeks late. Right. And so that kind of halts that idea of students thinking they can dump everything on you at the end of the semester, as they've been trained to do in high school. And it also gets them communicating, right? The one thing I want to do is continually have my students staying in contact and communication with me. Now, this often means they overshare, and I know this bothers some people. I just try to focus on what do we need to do to get the student through successfully, if possible. Now, if I have a student who goes missing and then tries to re-enter the class later, I will often encourage that student to see their academic advisor, letting them know that they have not accomplished the necessary work to garner an incomplete for the course. And so, again, today's student unfortunately demands more of us because we have to keep up with them. And part of that's just because they've been allowed to, or been overly controlled, right? And so I'm trying to help the students to be successful, but you also have to hold up standards, right? And so if a student has missing work, has many absences, then this is the student that I will encourage to seek advice from their academic advisor, and perhaps pursue the late withdrawal, which unfortunately I think is happening to a number of students this particular fall, as many are struggling. And so when it comes to grading, again, if you have someone, the weird thing I've experienced lately is to have the student who doesn't attend class, but is uploading grades, right, and files, or uploading assignments. And I just stop grading them. I just tell the student this isn't a correspondence course, and if you want to participate and earn the grade, then you have to come to class. And again, this is why the policies in place on attendance, on grading, are so important. Essentially, though, what we really want to do, again, is we want to use our policies to partner with our students. And so communicating is important. When you have an issue like plagiarism, I actually ask the student to meet in class and in office hours, and to discuss any issues they might be having. Most of the time in the foundational courses, we treat it as a teaching moment. Many times I have students who just don't understand how to paraphrase and how to summarize. And so we do some work on that. If they will meet with me, I allow them a 1-week grace period to resubmit for at least half credit, right? Depending on how egregious the plagiarism issue is. And so with behavior issues, because plagiarism is one of those that we kind of see on the cusp of someone who has also attitude issues. I'm lucky enough to have had a master sergeant for a father, and so I'm getting older. I have fewer discipline issues in the classroom, I'm happy to say. Again, I think if we use our policies, if we set up relationships, if we try to partner with our students, if we don't have an adversarial attitude, a lot of times we don't have discipline or behavior issues, right? Because our students understand that we are there to help them to succeed. If unfortunate incidents do happen, and they do on occasion, I mean, people are less well behaved, particularly after the pandemic. Of course, I want you to protect yourself and your students first and foremost, right? And so to invite a student to leave is absolutely, I think, the best place to start if things appear to be getting out of hand. I just say, I think it would be best if you went out of class and thought this over and then came to see me during my office hours. Sometimes just stopping an conversation in the class from happening and talking about it, right? One of the things that I like to do is bring things back to the rhetoric. What is it that we're working on in this class, and why is it that our rhetoric is devolving? Why is it that we are in conflict and rather than cooperating and moving forward? As I tell students all the time, the institution, the academy of the university exists in order to create new knowledge and to solve problems. And if we are in conflict, we are paralyzed. We aren't moving forward. And so to always bring conversations back and say, okay, everybody take a deep breath. Let's take this back to the rhetoric and let's talk about what's going on here. And often that will diffuse the emotions that students are feeling, and it allows them to back away, right? Get off the edge, as we like to say. I think, again, bad behavior often comes from an inability to regulate emotions, right? And so this is one of those opportunities that if I do see someone who's struggling, I might recommend the counseling services too. And I am always happy to help my students to make appointments by walking over to the second floor of Wilder Tower if possible. When my students end a semester, right, the grade really reflects their own sponsorship of their learning. And so to remind them of policies throughout the course, especially at those benchmark moments, like when you're returning a set of paper or at midterm, to remind them of the project, of why we do what we do, of how this is going to benefit them. If we can keep that focus on their behavior and their responsibilities, I really think that we avoid a lot of unfortunate issues, right? Stress and pressure being what they are, we can try to offer students the resources that are available through the institution to benefit them in those ways. But it's really outside of the purview of our job. We are not counselors, and we can't be asked to do these things.